Manipur, with a population of just under 3 million, it is a state that now needs to be put in the front of the mind space of all of us, so that we can take the cogent steps that are required to empower the people, understand their problems, meet their aspirations, while we simultaneously curtail all attempts that have been made over several decades, well-known attempts to instigate and foment a crisis in a border state of India. So we are not naive. We know what happens, which country out there does what over which border to create problems where. By infiltrating a genuine grouse of a people and creating havoc and arson until there becomes a crisis. So we are not naive, we understand that full well. But we have to have an equally larger understanding of what needs to get done. The situation is very complex, and I'll explain it anecdotally before I dive into this with people who actually know the complexity of it. We are living in a modern day world where we believe in a free market, a sort of a capitalist logic of private rights, ownership rights. Yet at the same time, we have systems of community ownership and tribal ownership. Now, on the face of it, these systems look like the right thing to do, but they are at an antithesis of everything else that we want to do. So, we want to bring up development, we want to become growth. When you bring development and growth, if you build an airport somewhere, the land, the value of the area around the airport is going to go up. The land value of some obscure hilly terrain which has no road access versus a rich fertile valley with population and civic services is going to be different. When you think of community ownership, therefore you also then engender community rivalry. So we have complex systems, and Manipur is right at the thick and tangle of this right now. So the grouses are very real. They need to be addressed. The problems of community and identity, the problems of land right and ownership, the problems of illegal immigration and what to do with it, both internal and from external countries, and the problems of narco imports, and finally foreign interference to create a crisis. So now let's deal with them one by one. I made a commitment last week that we would address this issue one by one. I am living up to it. Professor Amar joining us in the broadcast is the former Vice Chancellor of Manipur University. Major Mohammad Ali Shah, who has served there in his tenure, is joining us in the broadcast, and Shubhranshu Pritam is joining us. He's a research scholar based out of Guwahati and somebody I've known for a long period of time. Professor Amar, let me begin on a very specific issue, because if you go everywhere, sir, then the conversation will get diluted. So I'm going to take it subject by subject, and I'll come to address all the other subjects one by one if we need to. I'm not the expert, you are. Explain to us the complexity of land rights and ownership. Why is it a problem in Manipur?
Well, land rights is one of the most confused, and intention elements also are there in this confusion. And this is exactly where people have been taking advantage of. Nobody likes to be clear about it. And the most ill-defined in maintained concept. When it comes to land rights, or what we generally discuss in economics as property rights issues, property rights, the first thing is that in Manipur, well, we have the valley, we have the hilly terrain. We have never tried to separately understand these land areas along with their characteristics. So what happens is that, well, as you have said, in the valley, we have private property rights regime. Even in this private property rights regime, what is happening is that there is something called caste land. Nobody is the owner. And this is still there. Can you imagine 70 years after independence, you have such a thing? And among the Nagas, community ownership, Cook is the chieftain, the village king is the owner of the land. And we have never tried to properly define, okay, even if it's a chieftain land, from this point to this point, or even if it is community land from this point to this point, has never been attempted to properly define. And the same is true in the case of Valley
Okay,
also.
okay. Can you just break this up, sir, for just because I want to promote a larger understanding because this telecast is being watched nationally. So we can understand the issue better. We can then therefore generate some momentum in more people applying their mind to the issue so that they're not just a few people like you who understand it. Until you had mentioned it to me, I had zero understanding of this issue. Okay, for me to say that okay, tribal line rights are just a good thing without understanding that they can also create complication because it creates two land laws within the same area. So let's understand this issue. I'm going to show. Can I get my touch screen on our TV screen, please? Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So here is Manipur. Okay, with the capital Imphal being right in the center. Okay, now you understand this as towards the north and towards the south, towards the east, Myanmar, okay, towards the north, Nagaland, and towards the southwest, you have Mizoram. Now you can see the area of the valley in the center of your screens, okay, surrounded by the hill tracts. Now, in and around the capital and around this valley is where the largest part of the development is and where the most people, I think 80 or 90% of the 3 million population reside here. All around this are the various hill tracts with various land ownership rights along various tribes. So, I am going to get Professor Amar to help us now understand this. Now, Professor Amar, first tell us about the population distribution. How much is it concentrated in the valley, sir?
Well, that is exactly where the least we talk about population, the better. Because that is exactly also one of the points where ethnic crises start to emerge. If we say it's not that population are not there, we can count on it. But if we say a particular area where Nagas are there, we say that their population is larger than neighboring areas where Cookies are there, and we start mentioning about it, then the next day there could be a crisis. Because population is considered to be very important by all.
So you are saying is that sensitive that just a conversation about who is where creates tension.
Tamelong, Ukul, for example, Tamelong and Ukul are mainly dominated by the Nagas and more settled for a longer period. And Sasampur, those which are close to the areas where some kind of a trading and economic or commercial activities taking place, those areas are mainly by the Kuki tribes. Now, what happens is that Nagas have been more or less settled for a long time, and their relationship also with the kings from historically have been very strong. And I don't mean to say that Kukis have not had relationship. Kukis generally have been. If they find a particular location fertile, they settle there for some time. And if the fertility declines, they will explore another area where they would find it more fertile. And this has been the kind of their culture.
Okay.
And
So now on a point of intervention, sir, just on your thoughts, what is the one particular issue of land ownership that we need to address in Manipur?
See, land ownership, ultimately it is the state which owns. Ultimately it was the king who owns it. If there was certain kind of revolution or something, some invasion, it was always the king and who went save the village and the people of the village. So ultimately it is the state who owns it. The question is how far the state is determined. The state intentions are decided by the people who are in power. So what happened all along, what is happening is that people who have got, who are rich, let me put it this way, people who are rich and who can afford, they have always capitalized on this confusion. on this confusion. Even in cookie areas, they will find one or two cookie villages very close to the rich Meitei, one or two Meitei, and they too will keep on even finishing the forest and doing all sorts of nonsense.
Okay.
So it is not just one thing. There are internal factors and there are external factors.
Yes, like I
All
said, there are
these
several factors. I'm trying to isolate a practical one. Now, let me get Shubhranshu into this. Shubhranshu, now here is my understanding of the problem after having an opportunity to read up on it after Professor Amar mentioned it on his last telecast. Okay, and this is a fundamental problem of policy making. Now, we would apply the logic that we want to secure the rights and traditions and cultural dignity of tribals. So, therefore, we are going to allocate certain tribal areas. Now, the problem that happens is that by definition, in these tribal areas, because they are protected, private development and other infrastructure development struggles. The aspirations of the tribal people, of course, are just like you and me. They want better transportation, they want better land value, they want better homes, they want better colleges, they want better schools, they want better economic opportunities. Now, because we create, therefore, two systems where we are saying no development can take place because we are trying to protect you, but the person we are protecting wants a better house and better college and a better road and a better airport, we have created a dichotomy. How do we on a policy level even begin to understand this dichotomy?
Will be that cultural and
Okay, just out of bad luck, just as I finished the breath on that question, I think we lost Shubhranshu. So let me get Major Shah on this. Major Shah, in just understanding as a policy, not just as a security issue, and understanding this is a policy matter, which is one would say that, oh, we are allocating lands for tribal rights. That's an excellent thing. Why would anybody have a problem with that? Great. They are getting a chance to preserve their tribal forests as they are. But they also want development. And now this is an antithesis with each other. So how do we at a policy level understand this conversation?
Okay, Rishabh, that's a very, very good question. Now, let me tell you one thing. Before I move on to answer your question, I would like to give a brief background, which Professor Amar Saab very rightly brought out. See, we have to understand in the state of Manipur in the northeast, which has, they've always felt, the Manipuris have always felt they have been neglected by the mainstream, the country, by the government. Irrespective of the government of the day, they have felt neglected. Now, there are different tribes existing in Manipur, like there is Nagas. You need not be from Nagaland. You can be a Manipuri Naga. There's Kuki. Then there are communities like Meitei. Meitei is what? Meitei is the Manipuri Hindus. Kukis are the Christians. And Nagas, by the per se, are also Christians, of course. Now there's Meiteis, Paites, and they are Manipuri Muslims. Now, Meiteis are not a tribe. They are a community. So Meiteis felt that let us appeal in the court to get tribal status, which means they will, when they get tribal status, they would be open to a lot of reservations, a lot of privileges, which the tribal community enjoys. So now there was incidentally a Meitei judge. It was totally incidental. He happened to be at the helm of affairs in the judiciary there. So now Kukis opposed that. Why? Because when Meiteis get that status, they felt it would be eating into their privileges and their perks. Now, violence broke out. There was a time when Nagas and Kukis both used to be bitter enemies, Rishabh. They used to torch each other's villages, and there were hundreds of them who would come and they would torch each other's villages, and slowly and steadily they built peace. Now there is Ukhrul, a place called Ukhrul in Manipur, which has got the Tangpuls. There's a place called Shangshak, and so they are different communities, totally divided. Now, in 1960, there was a Land Revenue and Land Reform Act which was introduced by the government of India.
Correct.
Which meant it would protect the tribals and, in fact, the communities, the entire Manipur, entire hill people of their land. Now, recently, the government said, okay, any region, any village which has less than 50 houses, there would be no change. We will go as per the laws existing for them. Now the clash lies there. To equate it in the neighboring state of Manipur, in Nagaland. So it's got nothing to do with Nagaland. It's just for everyone to understand. They are different tribes. Again, in Nagaland, they are tribes. There's no communities there. Like there's Ao, Angami, Chang, Chakdang, Sema, Lotha, Punyak. There are different tribes which were not very friendly earlier. Slowly and steadily, they are becoming friends. Similarly, Nagas and Kukis in Manipur, they have become friends. But what is what is saddening for me is I have spent beautiful years of my life in Manipur. My battalion did very well in Manipur. Our commanding officer, Brigadier Gautam Ganguly, that time Colonel Gautam Ganguly, and later on he was taken over by Colonel Gaurav Chaturvedi. They did exceedingly well. And the Manipuris, they would tell me, I've heard it, they would tell me, Major Shah, I Nanganungshi. So I would tell them, I Nanganungshi, Manipur. I love Manipur. And they would tell me that our perception about the Indian Army changed after having officers like you. Why? Because we all saw the controversy of Manorama Devi, the alleged rape case of around 2003, around that time. Similar thing that happened.
Yes.
So now, Manipuris, they are very cultured, very friendly, very hospitable, very good people. And let me tell you, Rishabh, some of my Kuki friends who are Kuki leaders, who have a huge following, I've been speaking to them. 3rd of May, this violence broke out. And the next day I messaged you about it, Rishabh. So my Kuki friend leaders, they tell me my best friends are from the Meitei community. And the Meitei leaders tell me that my best friends are from the Kuki community. So if that is the case, then what has gone so drastically wrong? That both the communities today are fighting for each other's blood. And my greatest fear is this should not become a permanent hatred for both the communities.
Okay, so like what I'm trying to address here is not only a better understanding, which you've been telling us, and obviously a 30-minute conversation is not going to be enough. We'll have to come and do this again and again. We'll come and do it again and again. But at a policy level, okay, we have enshrined tribal rights and land ownership rights in India's constitution. Okay. The reason to do that was a very noble and notable reason, that there are ex peoples of India in these tribal areas who have tribal traditions, customs and culture, and every effort should be made to preserve that culture. That's perfectly logical, perfectly notable. Okay. But at the same time, in a modern time, we are saying that we have to also understand the aspirations of the people, that they would want to preserve their culture, but also see development and growth and a better future for their children. And for that reason, there are economic imperatives which also matter. And I don't think at the policy level, we have figured this out at all, even though a lot of attention is being paid on India's tribals. Of course, you have a tribal woman from Odisha who's now your president. Let me now go back to the professor. Professor Amar, so let me ask you the larger question. This conceptualization of tribal areas and therefore having an argument or a competition which has come down to street fights on who should get the rights to be a tribal, is it at odds with the aspirations of economic growth of the people living there? Professor Amar, if you can hear us. Okay, let me ask the same question to Major Shah. Major Shah, how do we get past, like I said, the aspirations of a modern day Manipuri, okay, who doesn't want to leave and go to Bombay or Delhi, who wants to live there but have better economic opportunities there? How do we get past this?
Again, a very interesting question, Rishabh. See, the tribal, 80% of them live in the hills. That's why they're known as the hill people. And 20% live in the valleys, in the plateau, in the plains. Like Imphal is not the hills, Imphal, Thobal, but areas like More, Tengnopal, Palel, Kakchin, Thobal, or Mantri Pukri, Senapati, Chachanpur, these, or Bishanpur for that matter, there is a mix of Meiteis, of course they are there, and then they are Nagas and Kukis also, who work coexisting very peacefully.
Okay. So I think I've lost that audio there. So let me take the opportunity to quickly put into perspective what is just being communicated here, and we'll keep coming back and having these conversations. I propose that now that we have a political break in terms of elections before the next one, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh comes, that over the course of 1 week, I'll select a week, we'll come back and every day spend an hour and address issue by issue, one by one. I'll try to start that effort today. I know it's a perfunctory start. It's not the most effective of conversations. I have had the opportunity to get a better understanding of what's going on over the past few weeks. We need to have a policy conversation in this country. This is not restricted to Manipur itself, about the system of tribal rights and the current modern day aspirations of these peoples, some of whom are enjoying the tribal rights and some of them who are seeking, as in the case of the Meiteis, the tribal rights. Okay? Why are they seeking it? How can the aspirations be met? How do we preserve culture and tradition, but at the same time provide economic growth and opportunity? We need to have a larger conversation on this, because when we say tribal people, what we meant in 1940s India is not the same in 2020s India. It's different. And the aspirations and the economic hopes and dreams of these people are different.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.